Hello YouTubes, welcome back to Telly's Marine Tales for part 2 of our famous female marine biologist series. If you haven't seen part 1, please check it out somewhere here. We covered the lives and legacies of the incredible Rachel Carson and Eugenie Clark, who were both born in the first half of the 20th century. But today we're moving slightly along in our timeline and we're covering two incredible marine biologists who were both born in the second half of the 20th century. So I hope you enjoy this as much as you enjoyed part 1, and let's get into it. Okay, so our first marine biologist is Ruth Gates, who I have nicknamed the Coral Savior. She was born in 1962, and as a kid she was also just like captivated by the ocean, but this time through the documentaries by the famous ocean explorer Jacques Cousteau.
What's it like down there?
It's fantastic.
And in particular, she was entranced by coral reefs. Actually, the story goes that she loved coral reefs so much and they brought her so much joy that on her first ever snorkel on a coral reef, she laughed so loudly underwater that the boat drivers at the surface could hear her. So those who knew her said she was just like this larger than life personality who had this big smile, big laugh, and she loved coral reefs. Now, apparently at school, people told Ruth that she wasn't smart enough to become a marine biologist, but thankfully she didn't listen to those people. She went on to study marine biology and she got her PhD on corals in Jamaica. And it was through her PhD research that she was exposed for the first time to this phenomenon called coral bleaching. Now, for those who don't know, coral bleaching is essentially the process where corals turn white, hence bleaching, and they die. And at the time, this was a really new phenomenon. Scientists didn't understand it. They didn't know what was going on, what was causing these corals to turn white and die. We just didn't know yet. But Ruth's research showed that bleaching was more common in warmer waters, and she was one of the first people to kind of link temperature to bleaching, and like decades worth of research after this would confirm it, but she was one of those first people to sort of suggest this link between temperature and bleaching. Now, the years after Ruth's PhD were a bit slow. Apparently she was a bit of a wild child and she sort of hopped from postdoc contract to postdoc contract, and she didn't really publish much, but she did not waste that time. She carried on learning, she honed her skills, and she carried on investigating this relationship between coral and their algae and how heat negatively impacts this relationship. Finally, in 2003, Ruth set up her own lab at the University of Hawaii, and this was when her research really started to kick off. You know, at this time, it was now fairly well established that temperature is what is the cause of coral bleaching, and scientists were really starting to get worried because obviously with global warming and climate change, the oceans are predicted to get warmer, temperatures are expected to spike, so bleaching was going to become this huge problem for coral reefs, and they expected just like huge swathes of coral reefs to die off, which has actually what has happened. But you know, at the time, Ruth was known for her optimism. So instead of dwelling on these like negative facts and predictions, she became interested in solutions. So she got the cogs of her brain working and she started developing this idea that maybe researchers could start helping corals to adapt quicker to these rising temperatures so that they could survive what was coming. And she developed this idea of supercorals, which is essentially where you farm corals that were found to be resilient to higher temperatures, so that they became more resilient to high temperatures. So you're just like enhancing that trait within them. And people like loved this idea, and she actually got a $4 million grant to pursue this idea and this research because people really recognized the potential and loved the solution that she presented. And now I don't know if you guys remember from our part 1, marine biologists, but they didn't only just do research, but they used their voice to share a message with the general public. And this is exactly what Ruth did as well. You know, she was this larger than life personality. She loved public speaking and she excelled at it. So she became a sought after public speaker. She gave very many public presentations. She appeared in different videos. She was on the Netflix documentary Chasing Corals. She spoke at the United Nations. So any opportunity that she could, she would share her passion of corals, why they were so cool, why they're so important, but also why they're in so much trouble and what we can do to start saving them, because that's essentially what we need to do.
A healthy reef is a beautiful, pristine, clean, crisp place with many colors and a lot of movement. And so, it's just your overall sense of the place diminishing before your eyes. And of course, I've seen reefs that have been annihilated.
Unfortunately, she did not live to see the end results of her research, and she sadly passed away at the age of 56. But her legacy lives on in so many different ways. She dedicated her life to saving the world's coral reefs from this catastrophe of rising ocean temperatures. And her optimism resulted in groundbreaking solutions to this crazy big problem. She recognized that action is necessary. It's not just this hands-off, very slow research, but coral are dying now. We need to save them now. She was also a big advocate for people who, like her, struggled in science because of their gender or their sexuality. She was totally passionate about diversity. So yeah, she was just this incredible woman. Her bright optimism matched the optimism of her beloved coral reefs, and truly she fought tooth and nail to try and save them. Excuse the costume change, guys, but my camera battery died yesterday. Anyway, so it's a new day, a new scientist, actually our last marine biologist on the list, and the only one who is still alive today. Her name is Ayana Elizabeth Johnson. She was born in 1980 in New York. Now, quite similar to Ruth, her love story for the ocean began with coral reefs.
I decided to become a marine biologist when I was 5 years old. I learned to swim in the Florida Keys. I saw a coral reef for the first time, and I was completely mesmerized. There's this whole other universe happening under the surface.
A little bit later on in life, she learned about the civil rights movement, and that really caught her attention, and that was something she wanted to be involved in, so she kind of changed her mind a little bit. And then a little bit after that, she learned about how the natural world around us is threatened, and she really wanted to try and protect these places that she loved. So then she decided, okay, I'm going to become an environmental lawyer. So she had all three of these things that she was passionate about. Then she kind of had this light bulb moment where she realized that she could do all three of these things that she was passionate about. She could do science, social justice, and environmental protection by being an ocean conservationist. That's exactly what a conservationist is. So that's when she decided, okay, this is what I want to do with my life. But to start this journey of becoming an ocean conservationist, she first had to study. So she went to university and she sort of studied marine biology and did her PhD. But even in this early stage of her career, when she was doing her PhD, she really wanted to make a change even from that point. So most of us, when we do our PhD, it's like very theoretical science. There's not a lot of practicality to it. She was like, I'm not interested in that. And her PhD research was super applied, meaning that it actually led to real change. So what she did was she focused on how to make fishing in the Caribbean more sustainable. And through her research, she designed a new type of fish trap that allowed any of the baby fish who were caught in the trap by accident to escape. And this trap became super successful, and it's actually now required by law in many of the Caribbean islands. So even from like the start of her research, she was doing this really powerful, positive science that led to real change in the world. But now Ayana has stepped away from full-time research to really pursue her dream of combining, all three of these things: research and science, social justice, and environmental protection. So now she really focuses on the issues surrounding climate change and how we can create a safe future for everybody, even as the climate is changing around us. So she is the co-founder of a non-profit think tank called Urban Ocean Lab, and this really focuses on creating this equitable and safe future for coastal cities, specifically by providing like practical advice, developing policy, and just providing this actual framework of how we can create this safe and equitable future. And just like Ruth and all of the other scientists have spoken about, she uses her voice to share these powerful messages. So she is the co-founder of the All We Can Save project, where she edited together this beautiful collection of poetry and essays and other creative pieces from all different kinds of women in the environmental movement. She is the co-creator of the podcast How to Save a Planet, which is one of my personal favorites. I highly recommend it. She's given many different TED Talks, and she just really knows how to engage an audience, tell stories. And another way she was similar to Ruth is that she doesn't dwell on the problems. Okay, we know climate change is an issue, we know there's problems coming, but what are the solutions? What can we do to try and create a better planet going forward?
The climate challenge is gargantuan. We need to change society, policy, economy, and culture. This is about transformation, and the stakes for humanity are greater than my heart and mind can fully fathom. So I find the best way to cope with this is to avoid dwelling on the terrifying scientific projections and instead pivot quickly to solutions.
And so if you listen to her TED Talk or her podcast, one of the things that she encourages people to do when we're starting to think about how can an individual person help with climate change, she encourages people to draw a Venn diagram where you have a circle of the things that you're good at, the things that you enjoy doing, and then the things that need doing in terms of like climate change action. And where all three of these things meet is what exactly you should be doing to help save the planet. You know, we all have a role to play, and not all of those roles are going to be the same. So when you're thinking about how you can personally tackle climate change, this is one of the tools that she provides. And again, it's like this really practical tool to help empower people when we're starting to think about how we can all come together to create a better planet in the future. So she's truly a trailblazer and a change maker, and she not only cares deeply about our planet, but she cares deeply about the people on the planet. So, you know, she's really combining these elements of social justice and environmental protection into this big cohesive picture and creating a better planet for all. And it's really not something that is done as much as it should be. Okay, so that's a wrap on 4 incredible female marine biologists throughout the 20th century. And I really just wanted to point out the common element in all 4 of these stories. You know, all of these women were incredible scientists, and science is super important. As I said at the start of part 1, without science and without this knowledge creation, we would never know what needed to be done. So science is really the first step in this process, but it is only the first step. And what made all of these women so incredible was they went beyond just the science element. All of them then they generated this knowledge, but then they shared this knowledge not only to other scientists, but to the general public, to people around them, and more specifically to people who could actually like make the change, like policymakers and government and that kind of thing. And this is what led to the real change in the world. So I found all of these women incredibly inspiring. I hope you did too. I hope you're going to draw your Venn diagram to think about how you can, you know, create a better planet going forward. If you have any female marine biologists that really inspire you, please leave them down in the comments below, because I'd love to learn more about it. And until next time, I hope you all have a very happy and inspired day.